Thanks for joining us today for our workshop series. This is the first event for the Build Python projects for Resume Booster workshop with Elaine. I'm so happy all of you can join us today. And this is our fancy slide template for building Python projects for Resume Booster. So week one, for this week's workshop, we're discussing resume tips and also stuff new resumes, whether you're in beginner or entry level, creating a resume to feature your projects and experience. So our speaker is Elaine Chan. She's a senior at Western Michigan University, and she's majoring in computer science, the minor in computer information system. She has a strong passion for developer community. She volunteers with the awesome No Code Python community and is also the founder leader of Google Developer Student Club at her university, and is also an organizer for Google Developer Group's Cloud Twin Cities. So her interests mainly lie in software engineering and cloud development, and she has a desire to pursue a career as a software engineer and developer advocate. And yeah, I'm going to hand now the microphone to Elaine.
Thank you so much, Eliza. And I'm also going to go ahead and share my screen. So I will take off from where we left off. Okay, cool. I'm assuming that you guys could see my screen. And if so, could you guys give me a thumbs up in the chat somewhere? All right, thank you so much. Amazing. So to kick things off for our opening ceremony, today specifically, we're just gonna go through a quick overview of this workshop series, what you could expect, some of the takeaways, things like that, and then we'll dive into the resume workshop. So a quick agenda, we're gonna start off with an introduction to the series. Then we're gonna jump into a resume workshop, leaving about 5 minutes for a break time. Then we're gonna jump into Q&A for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So with that said, we're gonna start with looking at the goal of this workshop series is to empower you to stand out during your job search process, in addition to teaching you how to create or construct a resume that will really let you stand out as a candidate. And also, I feel that the main dilemma is adding projects to that resume. So you may have a beautifully constructed, formatted resume, but the projects might be where you struggle with. So this is where we're gonna go through together to help you fill out those empty spaces, right? So a quick overview of our schedule. The tentative schedule is to have a bi-weekly session at about 7 o'clock EST. It might change in the future, so just keep that in mind. But starting from January 17, which is today, we have the opening or the resume workshop. Then we're gonna skip into web development. And from this session onwards, we're gonna work on creating projects to actually fill out those areas. So specifically, web development for January 31st, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and also data analytics and cloud development for February 28th. And for March 14th, we're gonna close it up, have a little quick wrap up of our workshop series, and also an interview workshop, specifically how to target those interview questions that's surrounding those projects. Things like, how did you work on this project, or what were your takeaways? We're gonna help you really guide through those interview questions to ace that and really, stand out. That's it. To keep in touch, we do have a Slack channel. It's called Resume Booster Projects, and that's where you can connect with your fellow peers as we guide you through this journey together. So say that you weren't able to complete this project during the session, feel free to drop any questions in that channel. There might be a thread there where you could just reply and we'll just help you out from there. That's it. I'm gonna move on into a quick little Q&A. Does anyone have any questions so far? If not, I'll give you about 10 seconds before I move on to the resume workshop. So that's just a quick overview of what you can expect from this series. And okay, the resume workshop itself. So I want to give a little introduction of my own journey constructing resumes. I definitely just picked off a random template on Microsoft Word and went with it. And I'm just proud to say that I no longer need to use that or rely on that. And I am constantly looking for ways to improve my resume. And I hope that through this workshop, you would be able to take away a few pointers as well. So a few things to keep in mind. You want to make sure to always look at the order of items, the formatting, and the delivery. We'll definitely dive into that deeper. So just a general overview. You want to make sure that for order of items, you include things like your personal information. So that would be your contact info, your focus statement, who you are as a developer, engineer, things like that. Your education, which we will definitely talk about a bit, your key skills, and your professional experience and projects, and additional sectors. For formatting, the general rule of thumb is that you want to make sure that your resume is readable, that it's easy to read, and that recruiters don't have to spend too many times trying to decipher what you're trying to describe yourself as a person. Next thing is obviously text and page styling and how that would affect resumes, either that they'll continue to read your resume or they'll move on to the next candidate. Next is your delivery, how you should promote your personal branding. So you want to remember to keep track of the 3 C's, which is to be clear, concise, and correct. So with that said, we're going to dive into order of items real quick. So as mentioned earlier, you have the contact information. So the few things that you want to include definitely is your name, your location, specifically your city, your state as an abbreviation, your phone number, your email address, and any links that you have. And for rule of thumb, you want to make sure that you provide links. So you don't want to just give a text of a hyperlink that they're supposed to copy and paste onto a web page. You're supposed to be able to have them click on it and it will redirect them just like that. So I did want to mention, if you were using Microsoft Word, you could edit your hyperlinks so that the text display and the actual hyperlink is different. So for example, your phone number, you're going to use tell and then your actual phone number, and that's going to redirect them to actually put in the phone number. And for email, you want to use mail to. So the hyperlink address should be mail to and then your email. And for your GitHub, LinkedIn, and portfolio, one rule of thumb that you want to remember is that you have to take note of the cohesiveness. So the text display should always reflect how you want to be referred. So it should be the platform / your username, something like that. So it could be github.com / Jane Doe, linkedin.com / Jane Doe, and janedoe.com instead of the full hyperlink, or github.com Jane Doe 01, linkedin.com Jane Doe 02. You don't want to have so much of mismatches. And I'm gonna check the chat real quick. Okay, cool. I think there's nothing. So moving on, we have our focus statement, key skills, and we're gonna leave education for a bit. So your focus statement and your key skills is the main objective on your resume that really brings out your personal branding, right? So you want to keep it short, sweet, but concise. Absolutely clear on who you are as a person. Especially you want to tailor it to the job that you're actually applying for. So it should be about 3 to 5 bullet points, and it shouldn't be redundant. Things like aspiring software engineer. Maybe you want to just write software engineer, things like that. And in terms of your education, I understand that it is the case for people to not necessarily have the education we expect them to be, and that's totally fine. It doesn't matter anymore at this point, but you want to include any learning opportunities that you have in terms of any free online courses such as Udemy or LinkedIn Learning. You could definitely include that as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a university institution. But if you did have a university, you want to include the full name, so it's not abbreviated. Full name, location, specifically the city and the state, and then the full degree name, which is something like Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science, something like that. Any optional items could be relevant coursework, your GPA, or any education related activities such as your honor society, the clubs that you were involved in, or any scholarships that you received. And moving on, we have the professional experience and projects. So as you can see, your professional experience and projects has to be in reverse chronological order. A few other notable items would be you have to include your links. And in terms of how you want to deliver the statements for these projects and experience, I will talk about that later on. And furthermore, you also want to make sure that you include the date, the duration of your projects and professional experience. And we'll definitely dive into the formatting a little later. So that's where we'll see how you want to format your date, your links, and the kind of statements you want to write out. Then we have the additional sectors, such as maybe you have a ton of leadership experience, volunteering experience, and activities, community involvement, awards and certifications. This is where it kind of shows you off as a different kind of person, unique, you know? So it's definitely a hot take for some people, whether you want to include your hobbies or not. I feel like it's very subjective. It's definitely been a topic to be subjective. So the rule of thumb is to not let your hobbies segment, if you want to include one, to really overtake the entire resume. At the end of the day, you still want to be a candidate for the job. You're not necessarily trying to be just a friend with an acquaintance with the recruiter, but you want to apply for a job. So keep the hobbies short. But if it's more technical, such as your leadership experience, you can definitely have that a little longer. But yeah, next we have our formatting. So this is where a lot of people kind of miss it, because they're kind of thinking, oh, content is more important rather than having to stylize it. That's actually not the case, because there are a lot of, or in general, the resume scans that are out there right now, they do take into consideration the styling or the formatting of your resume. And furthermore, it does provide a more clean look and readability for the recruiters. So you do have to remember that the recruiters have only a few seconds to skim through your resume. So if it's not easy to read, it's highly likely that they would just move on to the next candidate. So rule of thumb, you want to keep it one page, except for special circumstances like applying for positions outside the North America region or academic roles. And margins should be about 0.5 inches or greater, and fonts should be size 11. And in terms of what font you want to use, it is generally obviously general that you don't use creative fonts per se, such as cursive. You want to keep it at maybe sans serif or sans, and you want to tailor your content as much as possible to the job posting. So even though it is a hassle, it is very much a necessity, and you want to keep it as a single column format without tables, graphics, and it is easily editable. So another hot take is, should I include a profile picture? I kind of want my recruiter to put a face to my resume to kind of remember who I am. But the problem with that is that it takes up space, and it's not necessarily a favorite of recruiters. So I will highly recommend to not really use a profile picture, especially if you're applying for a very technical position. So with that said, let's go ahead and look into a few sample resumes and really kind of put all the pieces together on how we can construct a resume, right? So starting with order of items, we have our name or our contact information. So our personal branding over here. Then moving on to our professional experience, our projects, and additional sectors. So starting with the order of items, as you can see, it's a little different. So for this resume, we are assuming that you are probably a new grad, or that you're still in school, you're fresh into the market, That's why your education is all the way to the top, or that you recently gained a new education. So you have your education up here. But yeah, starting, we have our name, we have our city, our state abbreviated, our telephone. Remember to always edit your hyperlinks so that all these buttons will directly move a recruiter into the exact web page. So over here, LinkedIn link, GitHub portfolio, make sure that it's cohesive. It's going to be platform / username. Same username for all of these, even though you probably have a different GitHub username. You just want to make sure that they kind of remember you as this kind of person rather than a different person or something like that. And we have our education, our skills and certifications, our experience, and project leadership affiliations. So in terms of formatting, we want to make sure that there is clear separation between each segment. So as you can see, even though it's really tiny over here, there's a clear separation from your personal branding to your education, to your skills and certifications, experience, and all that. And even within its own sub-segment, it has its own clear spacing. So it's really easy to read through. It's not trying to pick a needle out of a haystack. It's not really trying to test your recruiter's eyesight, something like that. And furthermore, we want to keep track of our alignment. As you can see, a lot of it, or majority of it, is left aligned besides the top part, and all the graduation or the dates and the links are right aligned. You could set this on Microsoft Word. There's a bunch of tutorials up there on how to set left align and right align. So once you type, say you type finish align, you want to tab all the way to the right. It just provides a very neat lining for you to continue with. And let's look into bolded words. As you can see, it's rather subjective, but the rule of thumb is that you want to make sure that you only provide bolded words for the things that you want to really stand out on your resume. Another thing is that, say that you initially wanted to have or separate these two items into its own line, you realize that you kind of ran out of space because it exceeded one page. So you decided, oh yeah, let me just join this together into one line on its own. A really good way to separate the items on the same line is to just bold one item over the other. So there isn't necessarily a format saying that, oh, you have to bold your GPA, you have to bold your university name. You don't necessarily have to do that, but you just want to make sure that it's clear to understand, And let's look at bullet points. As you can see, we're just diving back into the alignment section real quick. So bullet points, usually they have an indent at the start of it. You could definitely remove that and format it in a way so that the bullet points start towards the left alignment. So you have more space to type in exactly what you want to write into your resume, right? It's definitely a good advice to follow through with. It just saves space and you can write more into your resume. And we're going to dive deeper into the nitty and gritty parts of the resume, things like the graduation month and year. You want to make sure that it's concise and cohesive throughout your resume. So say that you started you're stating your duration for this professional experience, the first one. You realize that you wanted to write only maybe it's just one day. So you wanted to write in numerics, you wrote January 1st, 2022, but in the next professional experience, you wanted to write a duration. And instead of numerics, you wrote it in, you spelled it out full. So it's 06 JAN January 2022. You don't want that to appear. You want it to be concise no matter what. So even if one is just, one of the experiences is just a one-day event and the other being a month-long event, you should always keep track of how you want things to be numerical over, you want to spell the months out, things like that. So it's definitely best to just keep the months, to spell out the months, but keep the day and the the year to be in numerics. And another thing is like, for example, you have a project and you wanted to provide a link. One thing you could do is to write out the platform. You use a separator and then maybe a text styling where the display text is view project and the link is tagged as the actual link. Or you could definitely do the platform and then / the name of your project. That's totally fine as well. You just want to make sure that it's concise throughout. And things like your professional experience, how you want to give a title to it. So you don't necessarily have to follow exactly things like the employer name, job title, city, state. You could, for example, if you're unsure of, let's talk about the project. If you're unsure about the role that you had, but you understood the name of the project that you contributed to, you could put the name and then say that it was a hackathon and all your projects are maybe just hackathons. You want to do the name of the hackathon and then maybe your team name or your role. So I was a front-end developer, or what award you won through the hackathon. So it could be Hack MIT and then the placing. So that's definitely an alternative for that. And moving into skills and certifications, as you can see, this is where your key skills are at. Some people like to really separate them into their categories so it's more concise. But if you want to save space, you could definitely just compile it all into a 2-liner and then you use a separator between each one of them. You just want to make sure that the spacing between the separators are clear. The rule of thumb is always have a space between the separators and the actual items, so it's not, squished together. And for additional sectors, for example, you have leadership and affiliations. You want to be clear on definitely the date, but also if you have space, how you contributed to that, how you really uplifted the community and what your role was, right? And in terms of that, we'll definitely dive into content a little later. And with that said, I'm going to move on to another sample of this sort of resume, but it's for experienced engineers. So say that you're not a fresh grad, you've been in the market for quite a bit. How would you tailor your resume to a new job that you're trying to opt for? So as you can see, it's a little different in terms of education. It's all the way to the bottom. It's not necessarily the peak. You're not trying to show it. You're not trying to spotlight it. But what you're trying to spotlight is really how you've improved or how you've grown over time in this industry. So in terms of key skills and personal branding as comparison, you want to elaborate a little more and provide a little more insight to who you are as an engineer in the industry. So an example would be an experienced front-end engineer skilled at building the tech stack and sample environment. So you don't want to be too vague about it. You don't want to be, I worked as a web developer for the front end at this company. You want to really specify your familiar tech stacks and how you work as an engineer, how you work with your team, how the environment was. As it mentioned here, it was an agile development environment. So as you can see, there is some sort of project management base behind it. So the main thing about being an experienced engineer, I really like this statement. I heard it from a friend, is that experienced engineers should have the ability to think or create ideas rather than follow instructions. So how you want to convey that in your resume is something that's very important, because the experience should definitely showcase you as someone who can continuously contribute to the company or that job. And as similarly as the previous resume sample, you want to write your professional experience in reverse chronological order. All the formatting and all that is still the same. And that's about it. Just the skills and certifications, if you have, Oh, one thing I did want to mention, I understand that certifications is a huge topic in this current day and time. So how you want to link it is you want to just write out in reverse chronological order as well what certifications you gained, especially make sure that it's tailored to the job as well though. And then the date that you got that certification. And I understand that some certifications, especially if you've gained them online, they have links. So you definitely want to link them somewhere, probably towards the side, or you want to link them right at its name. That's totally fine as well. Before I move on into content delivery, I'm going to look at the chat real quick, making sure that everyone's up to date. Okay. Right. I think that there aren't questions. But yeah, if you have a question, definitely shoot some questions now or leave it to us the end where we have our Q&A. But yeah, we're gonna move into delivery. So as mentioned, the 3 C's: clear, concise, and correct. So rule of thumb, you want to write clearly with familiar words, but don't give up on the word if it provides precise meaning. Things like the actual tech stack, or previously the previous sample, instead of I worked in a fast-paced environment, you want to up it up and say I worked in an agile environment. Definitely keep the agile in there because it really provides context and it is an actual keyword. So definitely keep that in there. Use concrete words. An example is instead of using automation, you want to say car. So instead of using front-end development, you want to say the specific area within front-end development. And you want to quantify impact. I cannot stress enough, I'm sure you've heard about this by now, is that you really want to let your impact shine through how you provided accomplishment through that. So what you want to remember is when you're writing out your statements for your professional experience or your projects, you want to say what you did, how you did it, and the measurable outcomes or the metrics. And specifically, you don't necessarily have to follow accomplish as measured by doing, but it's just something that you want to remember while you're writing it out. So in terms of metrics, another thing that I really like, I heard it from someone I really look up to, is that instead of providing vague metrics such as, say that your team was to work on how to up or boost team productivity, and you realize by the end of the quarter, the metric was that, oh yeah, we successfully boosted our team productivity by 50%, and you actually write that in your resume. But how did you specifically contribute to that 50%? It was more of a team effort. So it wasn't necessarily your exact contribution. So say that you worked in some automation internal tool. Within that project that you have, you want to say, for example, the project that or the task that you were tasked on doing was to create a notification system where instead of going through a chain of command of people texting each other, oh, here's what we achieved, here's what you achieved, you create a notification automation whereby the top or every level of the chain of command receives and are notified of what happened within the team. And you realize that instead of going through 24 hours of texting people, you did it in 5 minutes and the tool automatically sends it out to everyone. And that's what you want to include in your resume. So I created this tool, maybe some tech stacks that you use, the exact method that you use, what system you use, maybe your strategy in doing that, and then the metrics that you want to use is I boosted the team productivity from 24 hours to 5 minutes. And of course, if you want to include that general overview of, oh, our team productivity boosted by 50%, oh, yeah, you could definitely do that. It's just that it might take space. So just make sure that it's the sentences are too complex when you do that as well. And the last rule of thumb is to focus on describing what you did versus the product. So think of it as this isn't a brochure for the company that you previously worked for, right? Or this isn't a brochure for the team project that you worked on. this is a brochure on you. This is your biography. You want people to read your resume and think, oh, this is exactly what they did. This is impressive. This is you don't want them to be impressed by your team. Okay, maybe you do, but you want your the audience to be impressed by you. So that's how you move on to the next stage of the interview. So that's just a general rule of thumb. Moving on, we're actually down towards our last slide, or somewhat last slide. And with that, I'm going to look at the chat again. And Mara mentioned, are there available lists of keywords we should be including in our resume? Does it vary? How do we figure out what the keywords are? Great question. I will go ahead and provide you a link to that at the end of this or after this slide. So just keep an eye out for that. So some common mistakes that we have is redundancy, using jargon or slang. It's not necessarily what the recruiter understands. It might be your generation, or it might be some internet meme that we aren't up to date on or something like that. Or using too many adverbs, such as I did this project quietly. The quietly is what's redundant, and it really takes up space, and it just babbles on and on. It's not clear, concise, or correct. And using empty phrases, such as, instead of using because, you kind of try to wound it around and you want to say due to the fact that. That is an empty phrase. You shouldn't use that at all. Next is not impactful statements. Moving back to what Mara talked about, it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. You want to use action words, right? The common mistake is not using action words. It's using the very general, I accomplished this by doing that. So action words such as led, orchestrated, I strategize, I idea. You want to make sure that when they read your resume, it really stands out to them. It's like a little star in the sky. And also using passive statements. So the difference between a passive statement and active statement is, a passive statement would say, this task was carried out by the director. An active statement would be, the director carried out this task. So it just shows more assertion. It shows that you're assertive. It shows your authority really just shines through using active statements, right? And the last common mistake is not tailoring a resume to the job posting. I understand it's a hassle. It's personally one of my pet peeves as well. It is troublesome for every job posting that you create kind of a new resume to that, but it just shows that you are taking effort, you actually care about the job, and you're pushing through for it. And even though it's hassle, it's troublesome, understand that your efforts will shine through, and it will really help you in terms of just going towards the next step. So we're actually towards the end of our slide, which is some of the useful resources and links that we can provide for you. So Mara, here's what I can share with you. Let me go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. If anyone or our chat moderators want to drop that, that's totally fine as well. So we have our power verbs, such as, how do you want to find synonyms for accomplished by, or synonyms for collaboration. You're gonna go ahead and use those power verbs to just tailor your personal statements to make you stand out more. Next, we have some resume scans. So it's what the industry uses to scan through your resume before moving on to an actual person. And this is where the design factors come into consideration, such as, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but there are people who tailor their resume in terms of they try to add some pizzazz into it. They want to add a little design factor into it. So for example, there was a candidate who was applying to Spotify, and they actually tailored their resume to really look like the Spotify app. So this is definitely another hot take, is should I design my resume as such? From what I've been hearing a lot is that, yes, it's amazing, it's cool, but is it necessary? because after, I don't know, 500 resumes a day, the recruiter's kind of tired, and that might be very redundant for them because it's not what they're used to looking at your name. They're trying to look for a professional experience, but you're trying to make it look nice. So you kind of put it in a different formatting. Do they really want that? It's not really clear. But then again, you want to make sure that it's not redundant, right? So I would say unless you're really applying for a very design specific or design heavy job, try to avoid that for sure. Next, we have how to write a killer software engineer resume provided by Free Code Camp. So if you need more references, there's definitely a lot out there, but this is just the one provided by Free Code Camp on how to shine or let your technical skills shine through, and also how to let your project shine through. But don't worry if you don't feel like you're prepared enough. That's the whole reason for this workshop. We're gonna go ahead and guide you through how you wanna let that project really bring your personality out and really stand out as a person. So definitely look forward to our future sessions. We have web development, data analytics, cloud development, those areas, and how to target those interview questions on that projects. And that is all the links. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys about 5 minutes as a break time to grab a quick drink of water maybe and drop any of the questions that you have, because we are moving into our Q&A session right after that 5-minute break. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. I am looking forward to your questions for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll and see if I missed out anything.
Maybe Elaine, you can also add we'll be sharing like the slide deck link and like the resources also in the Resume Booster Projects channel in the Slack. So people can refer to there. It's like once you've wrapped the call, and then like I can pin the message in there for everyone. I know it's hard like to like click on the screen and Zoom. But
For
yeah,
sure.
so right now it's like where I am, because I'm PST, I'm in the past. 4:45, so probably 4:50, 5 minutes. People need to go refresh themselves, or just like grab a glass of water, stretch their legs, come back in 5 minutes. Yeah. And Elaine, I think Eswari, she's keeping track of like the list of questions. So like you can like relax, like we'll have something put together.
Okay. I'm gonna scroll back to answer Mary's question to see it pop up. The channel is called Resume Booster Project. There we go. So you need the specific. Okay, so what about a few more seconds to go before we answer questions? And my phone just turned 50. So you might be 450, Eliza, but I am 750. I live in the future, apparently. But yeah, I'll go ahead and tackle some questions real quick. So I see the first question. Should we prepare our resumes to be machine readable? Can we use tables and such? So definitely, as mentioned, it's a little more subjective, right? So a lot of companies, unfortunately, they do use a job or a resume scanner. So say that you have tables, it might not actually detect it, but well, generally, I would suggest to not use tables unless maybe specify otherwise, or if you reached out to the recruiter and you know that they're recruiting for a specific position, you know that they're definitely gonna look at your resume. You want to reach out to them and ask, do you guys maybe use a resume scanner? Um, but yeah, general rule of thumb, try to avoid massive formatting. And then we have next question, is it best to keep your resume simple or can we add splashes of color, subtle personality to the formatting stand out? Definitely, that's actually totally fine as long as it is not too extravagant. Let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. So I'm skipping, there we go. Oh, there we go. So say that you wanna make the title stand out and your favorite color is blue. So you want to add maybe blue or highlight to the lines and things like that. Maybe not too maybe not too much of a pop of a color, but something that's readable. You don't want a white background with a yellow text that's a little hard to read. So something that's a little more on the darker shade, but that's totally fine. As I mentioned, just avoid too extravagant of formatting like tables. It might be easier, in your opinion, to have tables to just construct like the alignment here, but really it's not too hard if you want to left align and right align things. There are definitely tutorials online. If you need more tutorials, I can definitely share more with you. I really just went through the documentation of Microsoft Word on how do I left align on the ruler, things like that. It's really basic, not really something I knew about though. Well, yeah, that's that. And the third question that I have, will this template be provided for us to download at the end of the session? Yeah, it's not downloadable because it's on a slide, but the slide will be provided. So what I would suggest though, because it really is subjective to you in terms of, say that you don't want to use this categorization for your skills and certifications, you want it to maybe only use a one-liner, you could format a bare bone like this first on a Microsoft Word and you name it template. Make sure that it's really easily editable though. So you use that template to just tailor to every other job posting. I feel like that's definitely something I do. So it's definitely very easy in terms of trying to tailor your resume to job postings. Next, we have, when will the video be available for future reference on YouTube? I think Eliza could answer this a little better.
Yeah, I can answer that. Sorry, I just realized now that like I didn't introduce myself. Like keep forgetting the event. So I'm the leadership fellow for Women Who Code Python. I'm doing video editing like for events, so it may take up to like a week to get it done. But we will be sharing resources in our Slack channel. And I just also want to add, like, for Mara's question, saying, do you want to add some color? It really depends on the type of job. I think if you're a designer and you're sharing portfolio, they obviously want to be more of a creative flair. But, just keeping aware of, like, oh, okay, people may be printing out their resume, or maybe they have the color blind, right? So it's like the colors may not, may stand out as much. So just keeping it black and white is fine. Like, really, like, you have to be aware of, like, when the recruiter's looking at the resume, they're not the hiring manager. They just have kind of like a basic knowledge of what the hiring manager is looking for, looking that in the resume and then doing the process. And then later when you're talking to the hiring manager, then you can, share like your subtle personality, maybe in your outfit for the interview or just like in your conversation and tone. But yeah, or you could also, create a website version, I think, of your resume with colors versus a print. Yeah, so video, and then, okay, hand the next question to you, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Eliza. Speaking of which, though, I really like what you said about accessibility. I feel like it's definitely something that's overlooked in general. So if you ever need resources on what accessibility is, reach out and we'll try to send you more information. But as mentioned, there are solid traits in accessibility that we don't notice. They might read things a little differently from we are. So how we want to tailor that consistently. Thank you so much for that point, Eliza. Definitely needed that. But yeah, Emily also mentioned when submitting a resume and the job description does not specify a preferred format, what format should we use, PDF, Word, or something else? I would highly suggest to use PDF just because it's not editable, so it won't change based on platform. So say that your version of Microsoft Word is different from what they have, it might change the formatting and it might look wonky in the end. So I always just use a PDF. It remains the same. It's even printable, and you also could make it so that they aren't it isn't editable, so they can't change the text whenever they want to, for sure. And
Oh,
Mara
Elaine,
mentioned,
I
yeah,
want to also add, I know you mentioned a lot of Microsoft Word, but it's also a paid thing. Like, I believe also if you use Google Docs, you can also save it as a PDF, and that's like a free version, if that's the alternative. Yeah, sorry. Back to
no
you,
worries.
Elaine.
I totally forgot about payment plan. I'm totally sorry about that. But yeah, definitely look for free alternatives for sure. And then we have Mara. How would the best way to expand on Fiverr projects and experience on projects? That's an amazing question. So you want to keep that, really it's up to you on maybe experience into project, because say that you're on Fiverr and you have multiple projects, maybe you just compile that into experience, right? And that's usually what freelancers kind of use. They compile it as an experience, say freelancer on or software engineering freelancer on Fiverr, and maybe give a quick overview of your expertise that you provided on Fiverr and how did you. I feel like another thing that you should really look at also is your people management skills. So in terms of your technical skills, definitely list out the project a little bit, the overview, and how you consulted or how you managed that project, right? So walk through your project management skills, how you divided it, how you consulted your customer, and how you provided a product out of it. And thank you so much, Mary, for providing much more links to really look at. So some of the action words, definitely go ahead and look at that. And Verandi mentioned thoughts on having a personal statement or about me section. My thoughts personally is that, as mentioned here specifically, you want to include more of a personal statement if you are an experienced engineer. But in terms of a new grad, you want to keep it a little more simple. So things like I've seen people write a whole paragraph on, oh, I am an aspiring software engineer with 20 plus, yeah, I'm not going to say 20 plus experience, but with an aspiration for maybe developer relations. So that's something you want to avoid, writing paragraphs that's really lengthy in your resume, because your resume should shine on your key skills, not necessarily bibliography of yourself. So even if you wanted to write an quote unquote about me section, keep it as a bullet point, and really it's like your elevator pitch, right? How can you really let yourself shine through, but using only 3 sentences? What's most important? And definitely make sure that it's not redundant, having empty phrases and things like that. All right.
Oh, I just want to add to that, Lane. Like, having personal statements, it's like the kind of first thing the recruiter sees, like the eye catching, because the rest of the resume is like, well, the text. And I usually find it helpful saying, okay, like in the job description, like, skills nice to have, and you can address in those sections, like, this person, like, yes, I have experience, running a lot of different projects based on these things in like this company, and I have this many years of experience, or like you said, Elaine, like, I'm a student graduate with like this degree and have like done projects in this and this. But just like a brief overview, because like so like once they read like the about you, like, okay, I want to read more like in the resume and want to like keep diving into like under each title or section like to read more. But like it's basically showing that you paid attention to the job description, like you're the best candidate, like you have the skills and experience like for this role, because obviously we tailor them for each role.
For sure. I see that that's probably the end of the questions I will give you. I'm going to steal this from Eliza real quick. I'm gonna give you 5 Mississippis to shoot another quick question. But yeah, in general, that's about it for our segment today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it and hope that you were able to gain some takeaways from this segment. And please look forward to our future sessions where we really dive into actually creating the project. And remember to join our Slack channel. We will pin all of the links that you need, and also for you to connect with one another, any help that you need in the future, for sure.